Let's go ahead and let's unpack this one together this morning, because wowza, that was a lot of energy coming my way. And I would like to assume that it wasn't like malicious intention towards me, but just feeling like very passionately about this topic. Here's the problem with a comment like this. It says the internet is not for children and they should not be there at all. There is no safe space for children on the internet. So we're going back to my last post of digital literacy. And again, not my area because I don't deal with children. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Kelsey. I am a spicy educator, a somatic sex and intimacy coach, and I specialize in alchemizing trauma and conditioning into pleasure. So let's get into this one, because it's giving me abstinence only sex education. Here's the deal, you guys. I'm not actually going to argue or agree or disagree with this comment in particular. What I am going to tell you is that I try to be very solution oriented in the work that I do, and this is not a solution. It is statistically impossible to keep children all over the world completely off the internet and not expose them to it at all, right? That's just not possible. And I don't know if you guys remember what you were like when you were teenagers, but number one, if I was told I couldn't have something, it made me want it more. And number two, even if there were like hardcore roadblocks, right? Like my parents were helicopter parents, right? But when I wanted to get around something, I got around something, right? And so this notion that we're gonna be able to even think that we can keep kids off the internet, it's not the solution to the problem, right? And so I go back to abstinence as sex education doesn't work either, right? Because you can try to shame and police and bubble wrap kids. That doesn't mean that you're going to get the result that you want, and it puts them at a greater risk by just burying our heads in the sand and saying, you don't need to know about anything related to schmex because you shouldn't be having it. You shouldn't be having it. You shouldn't need to know anything about the internet because you shouldn't be on it. I disagree with you, right? And it is in those moments, right, that number one, kids are going to seek out education regardless, right? And so giving them healthy ways and healthy opportunities to seek out education so that they are safe is really, really important, right? And I know for me, right, when I started getting curious and I started using things, right, let's be honest, corn is one of the number one things that people will go to because they don't know any other resources, right? That's not a healthy space, in my opinion, for any child to be in trying to learn about schmex, right? And so this like bury our heads in the sand energy, they shouldn't be on it, they shouldn't have access to it, right? And this black and white thinking, either the children are on the internet or they're not on the internet, right? The children are getting schmex education or they're not, right? We're walking a dangerous line because in not educating them, we are putting them at a pretty intense risk, right? The other thing that I'd like to say, because it looks like this person is coming at things from maybe a male lens and from a female lens, right? The need for digital literacy does not end once you turn 18, right? As a female, when it comes to, for example, online dating, there are a number of protections that I put in place if I am going to meet somebody on a date that I have met from the internet. That's a skill set that you still need to have, right? And being able to go, actually, I'm not even going to meet with this person from this Tinder, Bumble, whatever, right? Because they're giving me a lot of red flags, right? The level of predator does not necessarily go away because somebody turns 18. I can tell you that from how many essays that I had under 18 and how many essays and grapes I had when I was older than 18, right? So that doesn't go away. We're now starting to see this whole uproar of AI taking over, and a lot of grown-ass adults that don't know the difference between AI and real content. And from a space of education, from propaganda, that's also a really big problem. That is also something that adults would need as digital literacy that they just don't have, right? I'll see people posting things, reposting things all the time going, that's AI generated. That's not real, right? And so the need for us to have digital literacy goes outside of just the time frame that you are under the age of 18 to be able to keep you safe, right? The thing about having these conversations that are age appropriate with kids, right, is that you are giving them an opportunity if they are in a safe family environment. Not having a safe family environment, you guys, we'll talk about that in a completely different post because that's a whole other different can of worms, okay? But having family that you can fall back on to go, I don't know if this is safe. Can you help me, right? I'm not feeling super great about this interaction. Can you help me, right? And having parents, caretakers, additional adults in their lives, right, where they can help go, okay, let's process why you think that's a red flag, right? And giving them support instead of shaming them and making them feel like they're going to be in trouble, right? Because like this is an energetic, right, that was kind of the energetics about my parents, right, when I was a kid, after we had like an oopsie with the whole MySpace days, right, is I wasn't going to tell them anything that happened in the online space because I was so afraid of getting in trouble, right? But I was going to find my way onto it, right? And I think the other thing too is, you know, when we're talking a lot about this, we've got to have a conversation about under the age of 18, we're having a lot of different conversations, right? Because you do have 18-year-olds that are still technically in high school. I was not one of them. I graduated when I was 17 because I was the baby of my class, right? But so I graduated at 17, graduated from high school, thought I was a big kid, right? I still had more access to things because I had graduated at 17 and I had friends that were 18 that were older than me, not a lot older than me, right? But they were older than I was that then had access to more things that I maybe didn't have access to, right? The same thing goes for being the baby in my class and my friends that had all turned 21 before I had turned 21, right? But I had several conversations with family members about, you know, things like alcohol, things like DUIs, right? Things like actually making sure that I understood being behind a vehicle under the influence didn't just put me at risk, but it put other people at risk, right? Being on the internet as a kid with your friends, you're not just putting yourself at risk, you're putting other people in your life at risk, right? And so that's another point is, even if you or I, right, could manage to keep our child 100% off the internet, are you completely isolating them from their friend group? Because I can guarantee their friends have access to it. I can guarantee that they have somebody in their life that they can get access to it by proxy, right? Whether that's time that they're having at school or time that they're having when they're hanging out with their friend group, right? Like this doesn't solve any problems for us, right? And again, this is not my usual content because I am very specifically an 18 and older content creator. What I do within this work is 18 and older, right? This is a topic that is a little bit out of my scope because I don't overly love dealing with the overlap when it comes to kids. This is more so me trying to communicate with the adults, right? The parents, the caretakers, right? People that are going to have access to helping younger children, right, in safe ways. This commentary isn't going because I'm hoping it reaches anybody under the age of 18. It shouldn't, based on the things that I have put in place on my profiles. But that's kind of how I feel about this. The internet is not for children. I don't necessarily disagree or agree with you on this statement, but pretending like they're not going to have access to it is not a solution. And again, I'm very solution oriented. So healthy conversations, safeguards, right? Trying to come together as a community, because even if you go through all of the proper procedures and protocols and this, that, and the other, right? Having conversations within your community is also going to be really impactful, right? So that your kids' friends also understand the risk, right? And they're not with peer pressure getting your kids to do something that maybe they wouldn't otherwise, right? Because you've taught them, but now they're getting pressure from their peers, right? That's another thing that we need to kind of have that conversation on, you know, making sure our kids feel comfortable saying no, making sure our kids feel comfortable standing their ground and standing up to people and going, I don't feel good about that. I don't feel safe about that. So the answer is no. And I do feel safe with my caretakers and my parents. So I'm going to go have a conversation with them, right? A lot of times kids don't feel safe with these conversations because they are afraid they're going to get in trouble.